All right. We'll try to be appropriate from here on out. It's being recorded. Awesome. Good to see so many of you. Sometimes we only get together once a year, sometimes a couple times. Monitor the chat as well. While we're waiting for people to join, if those of you that are on can just introduce yourself through the chat or just come off, that's cool too. We've got a few minutes. And it would be also just if you're chatting, you say where you're from, and if you can also mention if you've done the count list before, how many years you think it has been, because I think it's pretty cool that some of you we go way back, and there's some newbies and there's some people that are just kicking the tires, and that's okay too. And even if you don't want to use our tech and services, I think there's a lot you can probably glean just from the process of what we're all doing to get ready for this thing. Mary, love it. I think you win. That's pretty good. Mary, Mary from Fall
I'm
River.
not sure I win.
28-ish years. I think so, right?
I don't know about if you call that winning.
Yeah, well, we're still here. We're still
Yeah,
here.
true.
That's winning. Fighting the good fight. Oh, yeah. Awesome. I love seeing too, like there was a point where it was just for a while, it was Matt Simmons, guy working as an HMIS admin in Quincy, Mass, and that was like the one community. And then we worked in a couple others in Massachusetts, but now it's really cool. I mean, I'm in Southern California now, but we've got the Northeast covered with Maine and Massachusetts, and we got the Southeast covered with Florida and Texas and Louisiana. Uh, in California, we've got 14 continuums of care right now. We have probably about 14 or 15 balanced COCs too. So, Ohio, North Carolina, Maine's a balanced state, Louisiana is a balanced state. So, yeah. The Northwest, don't forget about Northwest. You got most of Oregon, several in Washington. So, yeah. The center is, we don't really have that many communities straight up. So, we're going to work on that, fill in the blanks. All right. Well, being respectful of everyone's times. It's 4 minutes after the hour, and we will leave some time for Q&A. It's a small enough group that if as we go, if people have questions, you can put them in the chat. You can come off. You can just raise your hand. Get the team at Simtech here with me, and we'll, just have a more of an informal conversation too. So let's get it rolling. My name's Matt Simmons, president of Simtech Solutions. I'm here with my stellar team of both developers and community impact advisors. And we're amped up for this new count in 2026. This tech is pretty well vetted. There's not going to be a lot of surprises for some of these that worked with us for several years. It's stable. It's, in the sense that it's software you need to maintain and upgrade, but just the concepts and underlying, the goal of producing a report for HUD and also supporting local intelligence to inform decisions. It's all that part's the same. So, but let's dig in. All right, Joseph, do you mind? And Joseph is one of our community impact advisors and is helping me with the slides moving forward today, just in case the internet. But hopefully that won't happen. I'm knocking on wood right now. Because yeah, 5 minutes before this all started, my internet went down. All right, so this is the agenda, and we'll get into it. But yeah, the biggest part of it is we're at the pre-planning stages now. Some of you we have a contract with already, and so that's great. Some of you, it's in process or you're in conversations, you're still trying to decide. But this is the stage that we're at. Some of you are a little ahead, some of you are larger, so you need to be further ahead as far as your continuum of care goes. But if you don't have an agreement and you want to work together, by all means, just shoot us an email. Or you can fill out the contact form on our pointtime.info website, and we'll get you an agreement. Set aside a time for local demos, answer any questions you might have, take it from there. But let's just assume we're working together, and what do we need to do right now to get ready for the big dance? All right. All right. Why do we? It's important to know how we're doing. So, is homelessness on the rise, or is it on the decline? The HMIS world, the Homeless Management Information Systems, does a really effective job on taking inventory of the beds and the people in them for the night of the count for those that are in shelter. So typically emergency shelters and transitional housing. Also do safe haven as well. It is not a great tool for the unsheltered population, which unfortunately is growing pretty much throughout the country, definitely here in California. And there's reasons for that. But if you go back in time, and Mary was saying we've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this work since before the HUD data standards existed, and the really focus of MAS systems, the homeless management information systems, that were first codified in the 2004 data standards, is to support the reporting back of the work being done by those that receive federal dollars to the Office of Management and Budget in Congress. And so a big exercise of this is the annual homeless assessment report, which includes point-in-time results. But that really is for those shelter-based programs, the ones that HUD tends to fund more of. So we're missing the unsheltered side. And so the unsheltered population really needs a full effective canvas strategy to get to know the details that would go into the report of all these people that otherwise are often untouched throughout the year. And that's something that statement is also something that we want to be able to inform with the data. So are the people living in the streets, in your parks and your neighborhoods, are they touching your homeless management information system? And then within there, are they touching coordinated entry? Because oftentimes what we're seeing is the same people that are chronically homeless on your point in time count aren't in coordinated entry. And so that's a problem, because the idea of coordinated entry is to support the prioritization of the people that are most expensive and have the highest needs and put them towards permanent housing, which may also be getting cut. So when we see trend analysis, if we do happen to have a massive cut of PSH, which would be drastic, and this is not, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. You all know that the effects that could happen if you just take a $3 billion budget and bring it down to 1 billion, and the 170,000 people that National Alliance is saying will become homeless as a result of those cuts. Well, that's going to be a huge effect. And we need to demonstrate that person per person, as the beds go down, the unsheltered counts go up, or the sheltered counts. And then, what's the ripple effect? So having these trend lines really does help demonstrate that there are ramifications for drastic funding cuts. So that's part of the resource allocation strategy, and it's using data to inform policy decisions. So it's hugely important both at the local level, but also at the state and federal level. And so we to support research is like other part of it. There's a lot of underpinnings with the data. We have geospatial data sets, which is not the same thing as like we've got a bunch of numbers on a page or on a report. We can actually look at homelessness within each community, and within each community, when I say like a city or town, or it could be your county level, it could even be down to the census tract level. And that's important because we can also look at the community of origin information. And so we can start thinking about upward mobility opportunities that happen locally or don't happen that may be, the part of what causes, contributes to homelessness. So there's a lot that can be done with the data. If you can hit, I think there's one more piece. Hit Joseph, you can just tap right. It's required by funders. So we need to do it anyway, but let's make the best of this homework exercise and get something out of it for locally. All right, moving on. So why would you want to work with us? We've been doing this for a long time. We're a mission-driven for-profit focused on ending homelessness with the applied uses of technology, data, and analytics. So what that means is we started off as HMIS admins, and we realized that HMIS is very short-sighted in a sense. It's the bookends between someone's homeless experience, and it also does not include many of the unsheltered. And so we built around what the traditional HMIS systems are by building a homeless response framework. And that framework consists of Counting Us, the mobile app for the point in time count. It's the industry leading app designed specifically for the count. We have grown to the point of from one community to 3 to 5 to 10, and now we're supporting over 80 communities around the country. Over 25% of the continental U.S. uses our tech, partially because it works, and ideally, and it's great to see a lot of you people returning. But I don't, besides you might get an email about a webinar, but we don't have a sales team, and so that also should demonstrate that it works. It's a time saver. It's efficient to see the data coming in real time. There's just value there. There's goodness there. We do appreciate any referrals, by all means. But yeah, the whole idea is that we're trying to fill all the pieces that are left behind in the traditional HMIS system, which really going back to being a reporting engine for HUD to report back to Office of Management Budget and Congress. The other parts that we're doing, the data analytics within our data warehouse on data.com, the uncaptured data that typically that's not being captured with outreach data, that's shown away, coordinating care amongst outreach providers and asking people what they need and then responding to that need instead of just doing the enrollment. So there's a lot there. And I will share too about some of the new functionality that we have now to allow outreach to do a lot of the pre-count data gathering for the point in time count. Now, it can be now all the days leading up to the count. But if you truly understand and know your homeless people, people experiencing homelessness, if you know them, then we don't have to do this huge exercise on one day in January because you already know who is in your community. And so that's a big part of it. It's really getting to know the people, their characteristics, their challenges, and then applying whatever community resources you can to address those challenges. All right. And then, as far as like understanding the work, because I've been doing this so long, a lot of times in this space, if it doesn't exist, you have to create it. And so even like HUD CSV exchange format, when I created the first data warehouse in the country back in the first prioritized by name list, back in 2003, there was no exchange formats. There was no way to say, I'm going to get data from one system and put it in my warehouse. So we had to define those outputs. And the same thing on the annual performance reports, we authored specifications. So everyone, when we go to compare results, it's common. Like we all know what we're looking at. And so like all those business rules really matter because otherwise it's just like, it's an arbitrary number thrown on a page. And, so part of our process with a point in time count, as you'll see, is we write specifications if they don't exist. So, we'll get the housing inventory chart and point in time notice, the HIC and PIT notice, and there's an output part, but there's a lot that goes into getting that final figure that you report to HUD HDX. And so if you have any questions about any of our logic, we can stand by our numbers and we can share more details. But it's everything from the survey information that's gathered, how to handle observation tallies, if you're using vehicle and makeshift shelter, tallies, how to create estimates for those. Some of you are going to use geographic sampling and enumeration, and we're the implementers of that, which later became HUD guidance for that. But everything has business rules. So then when you go back and you're, standing up in front of people and saying, these are our numbers, you can be confident. And we're there behind you. If there's ever anyone to say, well, that doesn't make sense. What about this? Here's front to back how we got that number. So anyway, that's part of why you want to work with us, because we're methodical. And this is not something we just do in January. It's bit by bit, step by step. All right, go on. All right, 14 years. Hoorah. All right. That's our coverage map. All right. So definitely see a lot of balance of state COCs, which really help us as far as the land mass side of it. 365 point in time count activities so far. So that's, not just, one, number of communities, but like if a community's done 8, 10 counts with us, they're all part of that count as well. Yeah, over 60,000 users, 300, almost 320,000 responses, and growing. And while it's a success, it's also every time you see one of the numbers, it's also someone that is unfortunately living unhoused. So it's a, I don't know, it's something to celebrate, but it's also not. I don't know. I'm torn on that one. All right, moving on. All right. So I covered a lot of this, but if you're in the decision point stage, big part of it is this is what we do. We're not like an Esri where it's like, oh, we can also do point in time count. We're not a one-man show that if a person goes to sleep, you can't get support. We're not hosting it, in my garage. We use Amazon Web Services. We have offline capabilities where others don't. So in the sense that if you can't get internet, you can save the results locally and then submit them later on. We've got a few people coming to us this year that had a massive outage last year because it's a browser-based solution. And when the server goes down, everything goes down. So they're like, yeah, we heard you have offline capabilities. And then, yeah, we do. And actually that part of it too is like, just so you know, there's some free features. One of the ones that we've gotten more, fortunately, adoption lately is disaster recovery survey that comes, whether you turn it on or off, hopefully you'll never need to use it. But that's an example of our offline capabilities, because when the grid goes down and you've got people that are homeless as a result of flooding or wildfires or hurricane, you need a tool to capture information, create your own local by name list quickly. And, that's how we got to know the people, some of the people in Texas. So Houston and Texas Balance of State after Hurricane Harvey, and we work with them still because FEMA and Red Cross didn't have such a solution, believe it or not. But that just kind of gives you an idea of we're going to be ready, no matter what. And like Amazon, crazy had an outage yesterday, and here I am talking about Amazon. It does happen to even some of the biggest Amazon cloud. We didn't get affected. Some of their clients did. But if that were ever to happen, our apps are local. So you download them from the App Store or Google Play. They run on your phone. They're still doing a data capture the whole time. It just save it locally until in this case, if Amazon was down, until they came back up. And it would still have all the date and timestamps, the exact locations of the interactions, all the survey questions would all be good to go. All right. I'm not going to go through all of these. You can just look at it randomly, however you want to do it. You can go linear, but we're at this planning stages now. And, we've got some communities that have an HMIS team that does the point in time count. It's like 8, 10 people. So we've got some cities like Santa Clara, Alameda County, Sacramento, Houston, some, it runs the gamut. And then we've got some smaller communities where it's you. Like you are the HMIS team, you are the pit planning team, but it doesn't have to be just you because we do this and you can lean on us. And so these are all things that you're going to have to think about. With us, we have tools, we have resources. If we don't have it, we've got other communities that probably have it that we can put you in contact with. But yeah, because there's a fair amount to it. And right now we're going to focus on the pre-count stage, knowing that there's more to come. It's not my goal to overwhelm anyone. It's just more for you to know that there's a lot that needs to be addressed and that we've got this. And so at any point in time, you can always lean on the help desk. So if you ever get stuck with any of these things, it doesn't have to be the technical part of it. So obviously we provide the Counting Us app in the command center. But if you're like, hey, do you have anyone that has asked questions about like the tease out prevention information, like that we can maybe look and see what the kind of questions they had that we piggyback on? Or we want to do a use count. What kind of questions? But that's not just the pit, by the way. We do the point type count, but people do summer counts, they do use counts with our tech. It's GPS enabled surveying. So it can run the gamut. Or, what is it? How many volunteers do you think we should have? What do other communities do? What's their quotas? All things that, I'm just throwing darts here. But if you've got it, something you can just, worst case, we can say, I don't know, we'll try to get you the information. But oftentimes we have the resources on our website too. So just sharing a fair amount at it, to think about. And, again, pre-count stage now, and we're going to have webinars, every month throughout the count, throughout this count season, if you will. So, we're at the pre-state stages now, and then we're going to be, focusing more on like the days leading up to it. And then we're going to be focusing on the monitoring and what to do during the count. So just to give you an idea. And then afterwards, we're going to delve into, okay, you've got the data, it's in, let's turn this into a formal report going back to HUD, to HUD, or, how we're going to use this data locally. All right. Thank you. All right. The pre-count planning stage. So you have to define your approach. How are we going to do this? So, ideally you're going to choose if you're not using paper, if you are using paper, I'm sorry. Like I've been there before. Sometimes it's a budget issue. Sometimes there's people that are just, stuck in their ways. I've done it. I've done the Excel tool, take all the paper forms and key them in. If you're a really small community, it can work, and so, and if there's ways that we can help you and you want to do these offline tools, maybe we can help. I don't know. But ideally you're not, because the virtues of actually having real-time GPS enabled data capture and the oversight, it's just like, why wouldn't you? And honestly, like the pricing for our solution is based on the size of the community. And just so you understand, it's based on your annual renewal demand, your preliminary pro rata need, and the size of your homeless population. That's our formula. And for what could be maybe a few $1,000s, the time savings alone should be enough to justify working with us, hopefully. And we've got optional features. The way we do it is you have a base price, and for many communities, that's enough. They just need a GPS enabled surveying tool, Counting Us. They download it, they get a setup key for their volunteers. The questions that are aligned with what's in the HUD report, and they go do their thing and they push, run report, and the numbers can be sent to HUD. For many of you, that's plenty. All right. There are others that have more needs, and so that was the app that we first had, was just that. It's just, and then we opened it up to shelters too. So When I say it's, the Counting Us app, just keep in mind that you can also use it for your shelters, whether they're using HMIS already or they're not in HMIS. Sometimes people want to do it both, and they use it as an auditing point against their HMIS. When you're going to do your HIC and you've got 20 extra people, then you have beds. That's a problem. And if you had two data sets, you can compare them against each other and be like, why do we have 20 extra people over here? So just know that we do have that available. But then you've got other communities that's like, we need something for volunteer registration. It'd be really cool if that was integrated. We have that. We want to customize the question, but locally, we have a few other things we want to ask. Can you do that? Yes, that's the custom question feature. Our community is so large and we need to break it down into smaller parts, and we need the planning, logistics, and maps and all that. Can you help us? Yeah, we can help you. And so just sharing, there's a lot more to it. That next level down. So as you're growing, say you've got a large balance of state COC or a large county with many big cities, and all the cities have their mayors and all of that want to know what's going on. That next level down, instead of having mini COCs, which would be weird because the whole process is big enough as it is, we have jurisdictional leads. This role where you can take your 7 count. We just got off a call with Northern California. They have 7 counties that they need to do a pit report, for. But locally, each county wants to know what's going on, and they know their community better than the next county over. The people within that county, and they've got their own cities and and towns and mayors and people that want to know are we doing well or not. And so this region and count team management function allows us to have regional administrators. So in this case, we call them jurisdictional leads. And there's roles and responsibilities that go along with that, but basically think of it as a mini count. You get control over monitoring the incoming data, and we can potentially turn that on and off. So some communities I know that might come up this year too, is we want them in the setup stage, but we don't want them during the count because we're afraid that they're going to release information early. That's something that's come up in a couple towns. If that's something that's holding you back and you really want this functionality for helping the planning stages, but you don't want the numbers to get out early, besides having an MOU and an agreement with your people to say, no, you can't do that. Potentially we can work on that logic or just deactivate the accounts beforehand. That's another option. But the beauty of this whole deal is they know their volunteer base of where to go. They know where to assign people. They know where people tend to exist that are living unsheltered, and having this work spread out just makes making your job a lot easier if you're the administrator for the COC. And the other part of it is the awareness and the buy-in you get when you're inviting people to the table and saying, we want you part of this. It's going to, more than likely, if you've never done this before, double or triple your volunteer base. And that's what we see across the board, is that you shouting from one corner of the county or the COC saying we need volunteers is not the same thing as them getting, going into their own communities and doing it. It's just not the same. And you've got a lot of people that, you'll hear on Nextdoor saying like our homeless problem is awful. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to say, yes, but you know what, you can be a part of the solution, right? And then be able to work within the communities and say, we need volunteers. This is what we need. So there's a lot to it, and we've got a roles and responsibilities document. Thank you for putting that up there, Katie. Really appreciate it. That all of this information just basically saying, hey, if you want to break down the workload, this is a good potential way to do it. Okay. All right, moving on.
Hey, Matt, just giving you a heads up, we're halfway through on time.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so this is what you get for the pit. On the base, you get the Counting Us app in the command center. It's real-time data capture. It's an app. Data goes in the command center, generates the report. All right, so and everything was going to line up with what is in the HIC and PIC notice. All right, moving on. Let's try to do some rapid fire. You also get support. So we've got everything that we have on our website. So you've got, YouTube training video series for admins. We have FAQs for admins. We have these monthly webinars. You get the help desk. It's just pit@simtechsolutions.com. So anything that you're struggling with, just fire off an email to that address. You'll get a ticket back. We'll work together as a team to respond. Really ask for you to help to use that and not try to email us directly, because then we can work as a team. And sometimes emails can get lost, but in the help desk, it's either it's open or closed. So thank you for that. Simtech resources. So we've got getting started flyers. We've got, the questions that we ask in paper form. HUD resources. We're still waiting for the HIC and PIC notice. I am not holding my breath because I might do it a little bit. But they may just reflect back to the previous, I think it was 2024 was the last time we had one of those, and just say, mention that there's a change as far as gender versus sex. We will see, but whatever resources we have, we put there. And then on the surveyor side, we've got training materials, we've got FAQs, and the getting started flyers. So we're basically taking care of it from both ends. And you also get, when you work with us, you get your own dedicated training. So, take advantage of it if you want, or not. Some of you worked long enough, you're like, I got this. So that's cool too. All right, moving on. Optional features, we'll get through some of these, but just know that, again, we try to right size it. Some of these are free. So talk about the shelter-based surveys. We should change the name of that because it's not just shelters anymore. We did add support for sanctioned encampments and safe parking programs. So those are two project types that don't exist in the HUD data standards, but we feel it's important to delineate those from the traditional unsheltered population, because you're providing wraparound services typically at those locations. So it's typically a nonprofit. It gets grant funding to do the work. Let's quantify the work that they're doing. We will report it into the unsheltered category because that's HUD guidance, but we also want to be able to peel that off separately, especially since we're seeing a rise in vehicle residency around the country, definitely in coastal areas. But Spanish surveys, you might want that. Known location surveys, dropping pinpoints now to help inform where to send volunteers later. Those are all free. Okay. This is the expected question changes for 2026. It really is coming down to, what we have right now is the HUD data standards that came out a little late. And I say that we're trying to hand our homework in, but the teacher hasn't told us what the assignment is, right? So that was the issue with Show the Way, which is an HMIS compliant outreach tool, but we weren't sure what that meant to be HMIS compliant until we actually got this formula. So what you'll see in the left is they removed gender from the universal identifiers from the data standards, and instead it's not a direct swap, but they added the sex data element at the bottom of the program's specific data elements. So the key difference there is the things that are at the universal element you capture once, it's all part of your profile, if you will. Whereas on the right, the program specific data elements, they're for every enrollment you're asking that information. So you could have conflicting information in different enrollments. Where you wouldn't if it was all tied to your client, your profile. For Simtech and for y'all, we understand some communities want to preserve the historical information and they want to be able to do trend analysis in comparison to the way the data was captured. There's benefits to that. And so if you're one of those communities, you have the option to still collect the gender question. Right? We believe you're going to need the sex question. It's not definite. And you have the option, and it's your data, it's your approach. You're the one submitting to HUD HDX. If you want to just collect gender, that's on you. And you can map it however you want. I'm not saying I'm not giving you permission, but it's because I don't have the authority to do that. But it's your data, and so we're not dictating your approach. HUD might, but we're not. So if you need the custom survey questions, it's a little old school, but it works. We have a survey template that you download, use track changes, send it back to us. And that's the high level. I don't need to get too details for that. All right, known locations. That's the stage we're at now. We can use any existing GPS-enabled data sets that you have. If you have those, send them without identifiers. So we don't need people's names or date of birth or anything like that. We just need locations. and send them to the help desk, and we'll get those loaded for you. So pet@simtechsolutions.com. So you might have, it could be calls to 211 or fire abatements by your fire department, or maybe you've got outreach that's dropping pinpoints on a map for encampments. If you have that, let's use it. All right. We can also use prior hit information. So we can use information from your prior counts to inform this and bring that forward. And then we also have, the known location survey, which is that's the screenshot on the left. That is something that's freely available. And you can add other questions to it, but oftentimes it's one question. It's how many people do you believe experiencing homelessness are in this location? And you drop a number and it goes into the map. Right. We are seeing some people have follow-on questions with that, like, do we need to have security in this location, for example? We're also seeing sometimes people say, is there a target population? Is this youth or whatever in for this place? So you can add to it a little bit if you want, but let's keep it simple. I mean, the biggest thing is that we know to send volunteers or how many surveyors to send into an area. And then the last is the Show the Way outreach app. This is the ultimate because it's ongoing data capture and it's done by your trained outreach throughout the year. And you can use all the interaction locations to help inform where to send people. And when you send them there, they don't have to do as much data capture because hopefully you've already done it throughout the year. All right, moving on. All right. So pre-count mode, let's tease on that a little bit. Pre-count mode is you can set that up in the command center. And so when we set up your count activity, typically you'll be in pre-count mode to start. Consider it like your testing mode for all of your surveys, except the known location survey is real. Right. So people can bang away at the surveys, they can test things out, make sure it works. A lot of times people will use that as part of their training. If you're able to submit a survey, we know you're good. Right. But once we switch it from pre-count mode, or you switch it from pre-count mode to live mode, all those surveys will be ignored from your pit report. But location information is still good. All right, and move on. All right, pre-count data gathering. If you wanted to use Show the Way, reach out to us. We can do a demo, explain it. You don't need to do it for everyone. You can have select outreach teams. Maybe you want to do a pilot. Maybe you want to focus on a few large encampments. The way it works is we can take any data from your existing HMIS system. We get it in the HUD CSV format from your HMIS vendor. We upload it into our warehouse, homelessdata.com. We do some duplication. We'll remove any duplicates. We'll use that to seed Show the Way. All right. So all the information from your HMIS is now in Show the Way. You go out and you will Show the Way. You're identifying encampments. So I've got this one under an underpass, this one in the field, etc. And you're attaching people from your, or you can add people to the encampments. All right. That work can be done now throughout the fall. And as you get closer to the count, during the count, we have a new attendance feature, which basically, and we'll not for a better term. Someone's got a better term for me. Just fire it off in the chat. But it's basically saying who do we make contact with that's still at that encampment during the pit count. Because if you already know anything about Matt Simmons, I was born in '74. I'm a white guy. You know my details, right? If we already do that, you just need to know I'm there. You just need and then you can just check a box. And then all that data about who I am is going to be there. You don't have to ask me all those questions all over again. So what the goal of this work is to free up outreach staff so they can be part of those community leads and not have to focus on some of the larger encampments, especially. And so what you're seeing now is the attendance tracker in where it says a rapid fire gift. But basically, we've already pre-enrolled people into an encampment, and we're just clicking on the box of who's there. And then just making contact, and that's it. And then you're going to see here that once you've done that, when you click on the profile, that you'll see that contact was made. So person's profile record, that contact is the flag that we say, yep, they were there for the pit, but we already have the data we need. So we just needed to take attendance. All right. So any interest in that, again, you can fill out the contact form. You can reach us directly. My email is matt@simtechsolutions.com. You can do sales at simtechsolutions.com, even though we're not really salesy, or contact forms. But if you want more information about that, let us know. All right. So choosing your methodology, every community is different. Some people are going to have, we have got plenty of volunteers. We do a full canvas. Great. Awesome. Keep it simple. Not always easy. If you don't have enough volunteers and you've got a large landmass or a large community, we can do what's called geographic sampling and enumeration. I'll get into details what that is. It basically allows you to only canvas part of your community and create an estimate for the rest of it that you didn't cover. If you have vehicle residency in your community, it's vehicle residency is definitely on the rise, staggeringly, and it's something that we really need to unpack. And so that, and by the way, we're getting more attention, more resources, and from the research side of it. So, a lot of PhDs reaching out, knowing there's a problem. We're at the earlier stage of the data capture for this, in the sense that, and Simtech, our work is we're further ahead than others in this space. So we do have, both the surveying tools, the ability to derive local estimates of when the multipliers are applied, by vehicle and makeshift shelter type. And then, we can, we have the GIS, the mapping capabilities, so you can see what communities people are going into. But we're seeing more of a need for safe parking programs. And as I mentioned, that is a project type we support both with County S and Show the Way. But you need to demonstrate that need. And so part of that is having these tools up front that will create estimates that will be part of your unsheltered bucket on the report going into HUD HDX. But if you feel like you've got a population that's growing, it's worthwhile to look at this. And you're not just counting cars, or vans or RVs. You're deriving local estimates based on those, based on the people, and then the information comes from the people you did survey. So you're asking them, okay, well, where'd you sleep tonight? Or the night of the count. And they say it's an RV. Well, how many people do you sleep in? We're with you in the RV, and they give you a number, and that's part of your local multiplier. So we've got specs for that, and so everything is tied out. If you need sub-regional estimates, we can support that. So, if you've got 50 counties or 50 cities and you need to go use that jurisdictional lead construct, we can support that. So anyway, there's a fair amount to take in. Geographic sample enumeration, you use the known location data wherever it comes from. All right. So this is examples, prior years pick count data, Show the Way outreach data, known location surveys, any other GPS enabled data sets. And those are going to inform your high probability areas. So we're going to send volunteers to all those places, surveyors, sorry. And then we're going to do a random sample of all the other areas that we didn't say are high probability. And based on, with statistics, with a certain sample size that we need in order to derive estimates for the areas that we don't cover. And we've got that all covered. We get a methodology paper with it that backs it up. And then when you go to do the NOFO, you can say that they use this process, and it's a HUD approved, HUD endorsed methodology. So, and we can geek out more and spend more time on it. But in this one, all the areas that are in orange, I believe this is Alameda County, are high probability areas. Areas in blue were randomly selected low probability areas. And then those tracks that are clear, you don't see any shading, those were low probability areas that weren't selected, that we're going to enumerate the results into. All right, moving on. Vehicles and makeshift shelters. Again, I did touch base on this, but we have specifications for all of this. It's basically goes back to identifying which kind of vehicle type it is. For RVs, our characteristics of qualify the RV as whether or not to be included into the count, and we're leaning on guidance for that. But you may also still want to count the really nice RVs that wouldn't qualify otherwise, because it's a different type of housing situation that housing might be in quotes than what we're used to. But we're seeing this, as rents rise, we're seeing more of this, and cost of living is more of a culture shift too. There's more acceptance for a van life and RV life than we ever had. So it's definitely worth paying attention to. All right, moving on. All right, volunteer registration portal. So you need to choose account date. Once you do that, we can, and you have the ability to customize this content all on your own. We'll get into that a little bit, but all this is integrated. So if you don't use the volunteer registration portal, you're going to get a setup key. Right. And then once people download the app, they're going to get the setup key, your community of the year, it's less than 10 characters typically. And they just put that in, and that's what pulls down the questions from the server and lets the app know that the data being gathered all goes to this count activity. Other option is to use the volunteer registration portal, and then it's all done behind the scenes based on their account and the fact that it came from your subdomain. So your community.pointintime.info. And then you can add details about your account, what to expect. You can have a consent form baked into that. But it's really customizable. So on your end. So you want to change things, you can do that, customize the logo. It's all locally controlled. And if you're using the region account team management function as well, people go to volunteer, they can opt to volunteer or to survey in certain parts of your community. So typically that helps because you're not sending someone to a place they don't know. Like they know, oh, I always see people behind the 7-Eleven. I always see people in this park. And so if you're sending them out to a part of your community, they already have that local knowledge where to go. All right. And just, there's some standard questions and you can customize some of the questions as well. And this is the tool that manages the content. It's within the command center. So if you want to tweak the dates or the times or make a note, you can do that here. And you can also do the same thing as customizing the welcome email. So once they register, they're going to get a welcome email, and you can include whatever you want now. All right. Moving on. Volunteers, it's a big part of what we're doing now. We have some updated social media images that you can borrow from. There's a link that's we can drop in the chat for that. But just think about, you get creative, but there's definitely some standard sources in different communities that we see. You've got, definitely lean on all your existing staff first. I highly recommend it. And it typically is not something that happens right away, but I've seen great success when communities make it part of the NOFO rating and ranking. Did you participate in the count? And you have the volunteer information, so if they're full of it. And so that's big. Paid staff, if you can, get county staff to, or city staff or outreach to do this as part of their job, that's awesome. And you can help explain it and sell it by we need the federal resources so we can pass them through to you. And so we need you to show up. It's like going to practice before the game. This is real. We need you. And you have the industry experience. You know how to, you have to live this work to know how to engage. Some people, they just don't know how to engage people at the level, and some of the questions are really hard. And I don't know, it's just something different that it's great to be able to have someone on account team that does this work and works with this population. Sometimes people with lived experience too, if you can get them, because you just can't come into an encampment and just be like, I got to ask you all these questions and you need to do this. That's not how it works. So if it's really helpful if you have people that know how to engage people and know where to go, and ideally already know people, so it's like a warm welcome instead of a nice to meet you. All right. So if you've got the need and you want to send people to multiple regions, that is now a new function. Just sharing that. With a survey-based approach, you're allowed to spread out the count. It doesn't have to be on one date, because the blitz count, you definitely need to do all in a short time window, right? So if you're just counting people check, not getting to know them, then you're not going to know if someone else did the same checkbox, 6 hours later for the same person, right? But if you're leading with surveys, And you are able to think about your community too. You can also kind of break it down like, okay, we're going to do the Northwest today, and we're going to do the North, the Southeast tomorrow, kind of deal. You are able to extend the count window. And so William Snow, during I think last year's office hours, said, basically gave us the go ahead for up to 7 days after the date of the count. And you're still going to ask people, where were you sleeping on the night of the count? So you don't want it to be too long, because people that move around might not know where they slept last Tuesday. But point being is, if you wanted to spread it out and you've got outreach teams, or people that wanted to be part of multiple dates, you can now have them sign up for multiple regions. All right. Next. So regions, what are regions? What are count teams? So you take your whole continuum of care, you break it down into smaller regions, and then from within the regions, you can break them into count teams. So, and it's just a way of really making it more granular and making sure you've got full coverage. And then ideally, those count teams are going to those areas that you identified through known locations to say, and make sure we send people here. And that's going to help figure out how many people you want in the count team, and where to send them. So those tools are baked into the command center, and it's part of the region and count team management functionality. Okay, next. And this is an example of how you're going to be setting those. If you need any help or guidance, we have all the resources online. It's literally like clicking on different census tracts and saying, okay, I'm going to add that one. I'm going to add that one. I'm going to add that one. And you hit save. All right. And the same thing happens with teams. And then once you define, okay, this is my region, all those puzzle pieces, in this case, census tracts, you now have those to choose from when you're creating a team within a region. And so you'll just, sometimes it's just one census tract will get it and be a team, because you've got a lot of people there. And sometimes you're going to have, okay, we need 3, and we're going to need a car, someone who's willing to drive, because it's different areas. And all that can be gathered in the volunteer registration. Do you have a car and you're willing to drive? So you might take those people and put them out to the more rural areas, and then have the people that don't have a car or not willing to drive focus on the downtown areas. All right. Setting regional administrators is something an admin can do. If you want to have someone's raised their hand and wants to do that, you can give them authority just in the command center. Once they're assigned to a region, you click the star next to them, they become a regional admin. And the same thing with team leaders. It's team leaders can, regional administrators can establish their teams and identify a team leader. And then how that works with the app is there's a my count function in the app that will let people know, where am I going? Who am I counting with? So all of this is tied in. And so here's the team management part of that. So as long as the data is in there, when they open up the app, they're going to see information about the key information about where to go, when to go, who they're counting with. Just all the key information. And they can even reach out through the app. And this is all the types of the build on that's happened over the years. Like we obviously didn't have this in year 1. All right. Print friendly maps, all your known locations. If we want paper too. And I think it's helpful. Like I'll have my phone in my pocket and be like, I'll draw on the map. I'll be like, okay, you're going here, and 5 of them. You guys got this. I like paper maps too. So you can print them out. They're higher resolution than oftentimes what you'll see on your phone too. And you get the broad sense of where we need to go. And then as you're digging into a part of the community, you can get to in the app, you can go, as close as you want. But this is kind of a more of like, okay, here's what we got to cover. And I do like circling things and like, okay, put X's next to things. I got this, or, exclude this area because show the way data capture is already done. So we don't need to go to this big encampment now because they're going to take care of that. So, you've got my right of ways too. So, okay, or like, this is how you get into this point. So there's different advantages of this, but just to give you an example. And it helps again with the population density. We got to spend more time over on the left side because look at all these pins.
Hey, Matt, last 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. All right. So yeah, output, we'll get more into this, but these are optional features. We have dashboards and analytics. We have formal point time reports. So it's not just what goes back to HUD. It's like, what are you going to do with this data to inform local policy? And so we can give samples for all of this. And then we do youth counts. We do recommend that you don't mix your youth count in with your HUD point in time count if you're looking at the broader definition of homelessness. It kind of conflates the two. It tends to be different questions you'll ask of youth. And it is really helpful to establishing a baseline if you're looking for YHTP funding, youth homeless demonstration project funding. If you already have it, it's a good way to measure progress or regress on that. But just know that we can do that. We can also do, we've done train counts, we've done chronic counts. So we have the tools can be used in different ways. Just sharing that, but just keep us in mind for if you want to do a youth count. But if you want a separate conversation about this, why we recommend doing it separately, by all means, reach out. And that's it. So we've got a couple minutes for Q&A, comments. People want to come off camera. Any of you that enjoy working with us and wants to volunteer? Oh, so here's a question. This volunteer map seems very specific in terms of identifying locations too. That is a concern. And, obviously right now with the current climate, we do have to be sensitive of how this information gets used. It definitely needs to be a locally informed decision about sharing location information. It typically in most communities, it's, in a lot of the communities we work with, it's, if you drive around enough, you'll find people. So and people do move. Population density is important to help and figure out how many volunteers we need to send where. So it really needs to be an informed decision and decision made locally. But there is potential pushback on that. So I would tend to rely on what's happening locally. And, if you think the data might be misused, we're trying to help people, but not everyone sees it from the same light. And yeah, you probably need to guard it. And maybe this would be too much.
Thanks, Matt.
For sure. Yeah, any other questions? And I know some people have a hard stop. I can go a little bit longer if people have, or if people have comments too, we take them as well. Especially if you liked working with us. We'll take the constructive criticism offline. All right. Hi, John. Good to hear from you. All right. Well, again, we're going to have another webinar next month. So it'll be before Thanksgiving. Thank you all for joining. If you need anything, reach out to us and, be well. Well.